And welcome everyone to this edition of The World Today. I'm Michael Wong here in Beijing. We start with the conflict over in Ukraine, where fighting continues in the east as the UN chief calls for more protection of civilians. And the remaining Ukrainian forces in the Azovstal steelworks in the port city of Mariupol have vowed to fight on. It comes amid more shows of support from Western leaders who side with Ukraine. Our Sergio Olmos has more from the capital of Kyiv.
I'm here in Kyiv, the capital, where we had word that 60 feared dead in a strike against a school in Luhansk. The governor of Luhansk says that emergency workers are working now to retrieve people from the rubble after the Russian armed forces targeted a school. At least 30 have been rescued. Luhansk has seen lots of shelling in recent weeks. The governor there said that no city is currently safe. We know civilians have been hiding out in sometimes schools to try to protect themselves from the shelling. We know in Donetsk, workers leaving a Coca-Cola plant, going to a bus stop came under a Russian attack, at least 10 dead, 20 more injured. Here in Kyiv, the capital, a surprise visit by Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who reopened the embassy here, as well as a surprise visit from the band U2, who played in a crowded subway station, playing for Ukrainian fans, and in a show of support, defying air raid sirens that have been blaring all day. The mayor of Kyiv warned people this weekend not to gather in large groups, warning of possible strikes coming this weekend ahead of the May 9th celebration in Russia. Also, a surprise visit by the First Lady of the United States, Jill Biden, in western Ukraine, who came on Mother's Day to show her support for Ukrainians, saying that it was important to her.
Our Sergio Olmos there in the Ukrainian capital. Meanwhile, the UK says G7 leaders have agreed that the world must intensify economic pressure on Russia's President Vladimir Putin in any way possible. According to the British Prime Minister's office, Boris Johnson also called for more and faster support to Ukraine. He told the leaders that Ukraine needs to receive military equipment that allowed them to not just hold ground, but recapture it. And after Sunday's online meeting, Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida saying his country will ban Russian crude oil imports in principle. And Bulgaria's Deputy Prime Minister Arsen Vasylev says that Bulgaria will not support the European Union's new set of sanctions against Russia if the country does not get a derogation. EU sources said that Hungary, Slovakia, and the Czech Republic, which heavily rely on Russian oil, won concessions from the Commission to allow them more time to comply with the ban, but Bulgaria was not offered concessions. And Mr. Vasilyev says Bulgaria would want a derogation if some other countries have that. On Sunday, EU governments moved closer to agreeing to tough sanctions against Russia, but sources say the package of sanctions is stalled because Hungary continued to block the proposal. More talks are expected to continue in the coming days. Well, the European Union is set to ban Russian oil imports, exempting only a few member states. CGTN spoke to Sergei Pikin, director of the Russian non-governmental organization, the Energy Development Fund. He said sanctions will push oil prices even higher. Take a listen.
Oil prices will rise because there is not an oversupply in the global oil market. Any measure that restricts supplies will eventually lead to a price hike. I believe that once new sanctions on Russian oil come into force, prices will definitely rise again, which will hurt global consumers, not just those in Europe.
In almost 3 months into the conflict in Ukraine, some are condemning it, saying it is a threat to world peace and development. Some are blaming the United States as the instigator. Enoch Tonga is the president of the Third Liberation Movement Party over in Zambia. He has this to say about the conflict.
I believe, as a leader of the Third Liberation Movement, that the insecurity between these two nations definitely could have brought up the issue of the war. It is my strong feeling that the USA is the main pusher or main country within NATO. Now, it is obvious that USA has always been pushing their interest across the world to ensure that they have their stance or their foot everywhere as a superpower.